Good evening, guys. I'm Tori Carpenter. Do you believe in the fallacy of governments? How many of you believe that by instituting a monopoly of force that we create yet another threat that people need protection from? How many? Government? All right. So probably about 30% of the class. How do we restrain governments? Better yet, how do we protect ourselves from tyranny? The world's most greatest evils were inflicted by governments. The state can be and has been throughout the course of history the main source for disaster and mischief. Ideology. Ideology defines the world in which we live through concepts and ideas, basis of one's thoughts. In turn, what we think determines our behavior. Therefore, to control the masses, nations, countries, is simply a matter of shaping their ideology with, their worldview with ideology. Okay, the illusion of socialism, the illusion of a new living in government, accomplished this by preventing undesirable ideas from developing, redefining and reshaping current ideas, and through the use of justified force against those with obscurity toward ideological retort. Let's think about that. Preventing undesirable ideas. How do you do that? You do that through social control. How do you obtain social control? Through the media. We all know that. Everything we see, everything we do is through the media. On September the 1st, 1969, Muammar Gaddafi, at the age of 27, staged a coup d'etat against King Idris I. Within hours after the coup, he seized control of the radio waves. He sent his 12-member council, his advisory council, known as the Revolutionary Council, and they took immediate control of the Libyan broadcast service system. They ensured that they only took orders from their new leader. Under their predecessor, King Idris I, privately held newspapers were permitted. In 1972, Gaddafi outlawed that. Under the new government, under new government ownership, none of the 4 remaining newspapers were able to publish anything critical about the new national government. With apparent control of the media, apparent control of society, that was a key factor in Gaddafi maintaining control for such a long established government. 40 years. That's a long time for a man to stay in power. Media censorship dramatically reduces debate. It allows for people not to be able to debate critical ideas and point of views against their own government, and whether or not it's even beneficial to replace those officials. When you can no longer debate your government, when you can no longer be free in your speech, as one of our classmates talked about in the First Amendment, you are in the stronghold of tyranny. Gaddafi's ideological rule was constantly changing. He sometimes used various different ways to keep control, one being the media, but he had other ways. He tampered with revolution, ideological mixes, revolution, populism, nationalism. He had many, many ways of keeping control of such a country. But he also would do these things whenever it benefited him. He had no direction as to where or when he was doing it. It was day by day. He had different degrees based on whatever situation he was presented with. Redefinition of concept and ideas. The government The foundation, the political and social ideology of the new Libyan government that took control and controlled the culture for decades to come was all published in a 3-volume set of books called the Green Book. It was first published in 1973. At the time, the literacy rate in Libya was only 20 to 30% of the population. That's critical, considering that not even half the people in the nation could read. Although Gaddafi's Green Book called for direct government participation, funny, that sounds much like the modern society that we have. But Muammar Gaddafi laid out political philosophy and his government in the Green Book. The first volume was called The Solution to the Problem of Democracy. Ironic, considering that it called for direct participation from the people. But in it, he stated that he felt that democracy had unfair representation of the people, and that he felt that in his new Libyan government, that he was going to make sure that the people had ultimate authority. You speak one, you do other. There's an illusion. You change the idea. He quickly realized that wasn't going to be practical. He also realized that wasn't possible. He offered ideas that was for a fairer system. He created local committees, and he called these committees, much like what we know as the House of Representatives and the Senate, but he called the People's Committee, and he wanted those people, his people, to elect representatives on their behalf who would report to a greater local government that he had put in place called the General People's Congress. And unfortunately, these people believed that they could go to the General People's Congress and make change within their own nation, but they had no power. Ironically, the process sounds much like the democracy that we see in modern times. It's very ironic that he named the book The Solution to the Problem of Democracy, but yet he was establishing a government that is much and mimics what we have today. Volume 2 was called The Solution of Economic Problems. Basically, he discussed socialism, and he published this in 1977. And in the, Solution of Economic Problem, Volume 2, he talked about the economic system, and it describes this unique vision in socialism. Gaddafi, quote, "The purpose of the new socialist society is to create a free and happy." End quote. In keeping with these views, he felt that in a socialistic government, which derived from Karl Marxism, it's all tied into the different types, communism, various different types of governments. But he felt that by making a socialistic government, a government that everyone works for the good of society, no one person benefits greater than the other, that he was doing good. That he was creating a society that people would be happy and free. So in 1978, he outlawed private ownership of businesses. This is important. Libya basically received revenue from oil. They were large in the oil industry. One of the first companies in 1959 was ESO. At the time, was the first to make pipeline or lay pipeline, discover oil, transport it, so on and so forth. And they're now known as ExxonMobil. So at the time, for him to outlaw private businesses, he also outlawed the refining businesses of oil and gas companies, which is big back then. I want to give you a note. Socialism often fails economically under a dictatorship because a totalitarian regime removes the ability